Colonel Adebanjo was a man who seemed to have everything. He lived in a big mansion in Lagos, with shiny cars parked outside and people who worked for him day and night. Everyone knew his name. He was rich, powerful, and liked to show off his wealth. But there was something about Colonel that not everyone knew. He often did things that were not right, especially to his wife, Lara. One sunny afternoon, Colonel stood on the balcony of his tall office building, looking out over the city. The streets were busy with cars honking and people rushing around. He smiled to himself, feeling proud of all he had achieved. Just then, his phone rang. It was his assistant reminding him about the gala that evening at the Lagos Marina. "Sir, don't forget about the event tonight," the assistant said. "It's the biggest party of the year." "Of course, I haven't forgotten," Colonel replied. "Make sure everything is ready." That evening, Colonel and Lara got ready for the gala. Lara wore a beautiful blue dress that made her look like a queen. Her hair was neatly styled, and her smile was gentle. Colonel wore a sharp suit and a watch that glittered when it caught the light. As they arrived at the marina, the place was buzzing with excitement. Bright lights decorated the area, and music filled the air. Famous people from all over the city were there, chatting and laughing. "Isn't this wonderful?" Lara said, looking around. "Yes, it's quite the event," Colonel replied, though his eyes were already wandering. They walked into the main hall, where waiters carried trays of tasty snacks and drinks. Colonel greeted many people, shaking hands and nodding politely. Lara stayed by his side, but she could tell his mind was elsewhere. "Colonel, I'm going to find our seats," she said softly. "All right," he said, barely looking at her. As Lara walked away, Colonel's gaze fell upon someone he had never seen before. Across the room stood a woman who seemed to glow. She had long, dark hair that flowed over her shoulders and eyes that sparkled like stars. She wore a simple white dress that moved gently as she did. Colonel felt a strange pull toward her. He couldn't take his eyes off her. "Who is that?" he whispered to himself. He decided to find out. Making his way through the crowd, he approached her. "Good evening," he said with a charming smile. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Colonel Adebanjo." The woman turned to face him. Close, she was even more beautiful. There was something mysterious about her, something he couldn't quite understand. "Hello, Mr. Adebanjo," she replied softly. "I'm Amina." "Amina," he repeated. "That's a lovely name." She smiled but didn't say anything more. "Are you enjoying the gala?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation going. "It's quite interesting," she said, her eyes looking around the room. "May I get you a drink?" Colonel offered. "No, thank you," Amina replied. "I was just about to step outside for some fresh air." "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She paused for a moment, then nodded gently. They walked out to the balcony overlooking the water. The moon was bright, casting a silver glow over the ocean waves. "It's a beautiful night," Colonel said, leaning on the railing. "Yes, it is," Amina agreed, her gaze fixed on the sea. "Do you come to these events often?" he asked. "Not really," she answered. "I prefer quieter places." Colonel was intrigued. Most people he met loved the spotlight, but Amina seemed different. "What brings you here tonight?" he inquired. "A friend invited me," she said simply. They stood in silence for a few moments, listening to the gentle sound of the waves. "You seem lost in thought," Colonel observed. "The ocean reminds me of home," Amina said softly. "Are you from Lagos?" he asked. "In a way," she replied, a mysterious smile on her lips. Colonel wanted to know more about her. There was something about Amina that made him feel curious and excited. "Perhaps we could meet again sometime," he suggested. "Perhaps," she said, turning to face him. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, he felt as if he was looking into deep waters. Just then, Lara appeared at the doorway. "There you are, Colonel," she said. "They're about to start the presentations." Colonel turned to his wife, a hint of annoyance crossing his face. "Yes, I'll be right there," he said quickly. When he looked back, Amina was already walking away. "Wait," he called out, but she didn't turn around. She disappeared into the crowd inside. "Who was that?" Lara asked. "Just someone I met," Colonel replied, trying to sound casual. Lara looked at him for a moment, sensing something was off. "Let's go inside," she said quietly. They returned to the main hall, but Kunnal's mind was elsewhere. He scanned the room, hoping to catch another glimpse of Amina, but she was nowhere to be seen. Throughout the evening, as speeches were made and awards were given, Kunnal could not focus. His thoughts kept drifting back to the mysterious woman by the sea. "Are you feeling all right?" Lara asked him at one point. "Yes, I'm fine," he said, forcing a smile. But Lara knew him well enough to see that something was bothering him. As the gala came to an end, Kunnal and Lara made their way to the car. The driver opened the door for them, and they settled into the back seat. "Did you enjoy the evening?" Lara asked, looking out the window. "It was all right," Kunnal replied shortly. They drove in silence for a while. The streets were quiet, and the city lights flickered past. "You seemed distracted tonight," Lara said gently. "Just tired, I guess," Kunnal mumbled. Lara sighed softly. She wanted to reach out to him, but there was a distance between them that she couldn't bridge. When they arrived home, Kunnal went straight to his study. "I'm going to finish some work," he said, not meeting her eyes. "All right," Lara replied, feeling a pang of sadness. In his study, Kunnal sat at his desk, but he couldn't focus on his work. He kept thinking about Amina. Who was she? Why did she seem so different from anyone he'd ever met? He picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Yes, Mr. Adebanjo?" The assistant answered promptly. "I need you to find someone for me," Kunnal said. "Of course, sir." "Who is it?" "Her name is Amina. She was at the gala tonight. Find out everything you can about her." "I'll get right on it," the assistant replied. Kunnal hung up the phone, a determined look on his face. The next morning, Kunnal was already up and dressed when Lara came down for breakfast. "You're up early," she remarked. "Lots to do today," he said, sipping his coffee. "Anything special happening?" she asked. "Just meetings," he replied vaguely. Lara nodded, feeling that familiar distance again. As Kunnal left the house, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his assistant. "Found Amina. She works at a design firm downtown. Here's the address." Kunnal smiled to himself. He felt a thrill of excitement. He decided to visit the design firm, pretending to be interested in their services. When he arrived, he was greeted by a receptionist. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" she asked politely. "I'm interested in speaking with one of your consultants," Kunnal said. "Is Amina available?" "Let me check," the receptionist replied, making a call. "She'll be with you shortly." Kunnal waited in the lobby, looking around at the elegant decor. A few minutes later, Amina appeared. She looked surprised to see him. "Mr. Adebanjo," she said calmly. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Please, call me Kunnal," he said with a smile. "I was in the area and thought I'd drop by. How can I assist you?" Amina asked, her expression unreadable. "I'm considering a new project and thought your firm might be able to help," he lied smoothly. "All right," she said. "Let's discuss it in the conference room." They walked down a hallway to a quiet room. Amina offered him a seat and took out a notebook. "Tell me about your project," she said. Kunnal hadn't thought that far ahead, but he quickly came up with an idea. "I'm interested in building a new resort by the ocean," he said. "Something unique and luxurious." Amina raised an eyebrow. "That's quite an undertaking." "Yes, and I believe you have the talent to make it happen," he said, leaning forward. She looked at him thoughtfully. "Why do you say that?" "Because you have an eye for beauty," he replied. Amina paused, then closed her notebook. "Mr. Adebanjo, if you're here for business, I'm happy to help. But if there's another reason, I think we're done here." Kunnal was taken aback. "I assure you, I'm serious about this project." "Very well," she said, opening her notebook again. "What exactly do you envision for this resort?" They spent the next hour discussing ideas. As they talked, Kunnal found himself even more drawn to her. She was smart, insightful, and didn't fall for his usual charms. When the meeting ended, Amina stood up. "Thank you for coming in. I'll put together a proposal for you." "I look forward to it," Kunnal said, standing as well. "Perhaps we could continue our conversation over dinner?" "That won't be necessary," she replied politely. "Good day, Mr. Adebanjo." She left the room, leaving Kunal standing there, surprised by her firmness. As he walked out of the building, he couldn't help but smile. She was a challenge, and he liked that. Over the next few days, Kunal found excuses to meet with Amina. He invited her to see potential sites for the resort, asked for her opinions on designs, and tried to impress her with his wealth. But Amina remained professional, keeping their interactions strictly about work. One afternoon, as they stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean, Kunal tried again. "You know, Amina," he said, "I enjoy spending time with you." "Thank you," she replied, looking out at the sea. "Maybe we could get to know each other better," he suggested. She turned to face him. "Mr. Adebanjo, I think it's best if we keep our relationship professional. Please, call me Kunal," he insisted. "And why keep things so formal?" She sighed softly. "Because it's important to keep boundaries." "But what if I want to cross those boundaries?" he asked, stepping closer. Amina looked into his eyes. "Sometimes, crossing boundaries can lead to trouble. Maybe I'm willing to take that risk," he said with a grin. She shook her head gently. "Be careful what you wish for." Kunal felt a thrill run through him. "I like a bit of danger." Amina smiled slightly. "Then perhaps you'll get more than you bargained for." Before he could say more, her phone rang. "Excuse me," she said, answering the call. "Yes? I'll be right there." She ended the call and looked at him. "I have to go. We'll continue this discussion another time." "Let me drive you," Kunal offered. "That's not necessary," she replied. "Goodbye, Kunal." She walked away, leaving him standing alone once again. Kunal watched her go, feeling more intrigued than ever. There was something about Amina that was different from anyone he'd ever met. Back at his office, Kunal couldn't focus on his work. His mind kept drifting to thoughts of her. His assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, you have a meeting in 5 minutes," the assistant reminded him. "Cancel it," Kunal said abruptly. "But sir—" "I said cancel it," he repeated firmly. "Yes, sir," the assistant replied, backing out of the room. Kunal leaned back in his chair, thinking. He needed to find a way to get closer to Amina. That evening, he decided to call her. "Hello," Amina answered. "Amina, it's Kunal," he said. "How did you get my number?" she asked, sounding surprised. "I have my ways," he said lightly. "I wanted to invite you to a special event tomorrow night." "Thank you, but I don't think that's a good idea," she replied. "Please, it's important," he insisted. "It's a private gathering, and I think you'd enjoy it." There was a pause. "All right," she said finally. "One evening." "Wonderful," Kunal exclaimed. "I'll send a car to pick you up at 7. "That won't be necessary. I'll meet you there," she said. "As you wish," he agreed. They said their goodbyes, and Kunal felt a surge of excitement. The next night, Kunal arrived at the exclusive restaurant early. He reserved a private table with a view of the ocean. When Amina walked in, she looked stunning. She wore a simple dress that flowed like water, and her hair was gently pulled back. "You look beautiful," Kunal said as he stood to greet her. "Thank you," she replied calmly. They sat down and the waiter brought them menus. "I hope you like seafood," Kunal said, gesturing to the menu. "I do," Amina replied, glancing at the options. They ordered their meals, and Kunal tried to steer the conversation toward personal topics. "Tell me about yourself," he said. "Where did you grow up?" "Here and there," she answered vaguely. "Do you have family in Lagos?" he asked. "Not exactly," she said, taking a sip of water. Kunal smiled. "You're very mysterious." "Perhaps," she said with a hint of a smile. As the evening went on, Kunal found himself more and more captivated by her. She was graceful, intelligent, and didn't fall for his usual charm. After dinner, they stepped out onto the balcony. The moon was full, and the ocean waves shimmered under its light. "It's a beautiful night," Kunal said softly. "Yes, it is," Amina agreed. He looked at her, feeling a strong desire to know her better. "Amina," he began, "I feel like there's so much more to you than meets the eye." She turned to face him. "We all have our secrets. Would you share some of yours with me?" he asked gently. "Some things are better left unsaid," she replied. Kunal reached out and took her hand. "I want to understand you," She looked down at their hands, then back up at him. Be careful what you wish for, she whispered. Before he could respond, she pulled her hand away. It's getting late, she said. I should go. Let me at least call you a car, Kunnel offered. That won't be necessary, she said. Good night, Kunnel. She walked away, disappearing into the night. Kunnel stood there, a mix of frustration and fascination swirling inside him. Over the next few days, he tried to contact her, but she didn't answer his calls or messages. One evening, as he sat alone in his study, Lara knocked on the door. May I come in? She asked. Of course, he said, looking up. She entered and sat down across from him. Kunnel, is everything all right? She asked gently. Why do you ask? He replied. You've been distant lately, she said. I feel like we're drifting apart. He sighed. It's just work, Lara. Nothing to worry about. She reached out and touched his hand. You can talk to me, you know. He pulled his hand away. I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. Lara looked hurt, but didn't say anything more. Is there anything else? Kunnel asked, turning back to his papers. No, she said softly. Good night. She left the room, and Kunnel felt a twinge of guilt. But his thoughts quickly returned to Amina. He decided he needed to find her. The next day, he went back to the design firm, but the receptionist told him that Amina was no longer working there. What do you mean? Kunnel asked, surprised. She resigned yesterday, the receptionist said. Did she say where she was going? He pressed. No, she didn't, the receptionist replied. Kunnel left the building, feeling frustrated and confused. That evening, as he drove along the coast, he saw a figure standing by the water. His heart leapt. He pulled over and got out of the car. Amina, he called out. She turned to look at him, her face calm. Kunnel, she said softly. I've been looking for you, he said, walking toward her. Why? She asked. Because I can't stop thinking about you, he admitted. She sighed. I told you, some things are better left alone. I don't believe that, he said firmly. I want to be with you. She looked at him sadly. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me, he urged. Amina gazed out at the ocean. There are secrets that can't be shared. I don't care, Kunnel said. I need to know you. She turned to face him. Very well. But remember, you chose this. Before he could reply, she walked away along the shoreline. Wait, he called, but she didn't stop. Kunnel watched her until she disappeared into the night. He stood there, the sound of the waves echoing in his ears. Back at home, Kunnel couldn't sleep. He felt drawn to Amina in a way he couldn't explain. Lara noticed his restlessness. Kunnel, what's wrong? She asked as he lay awake beside her. Nothing, he said shortly. She sighed and turned away, tears welling in her eyes. Kunnel closed his eyes, but all he could see was Amina's face. He knew he was crossing a line, but he didn't care. I'll find you, he whispered into the darkness. Kunnel couldn't stop thinking about Amina. No matter how hard he tried to focus on his work or spend time with his wife, her face kept appearing in his mind. The way her eyes seemed to look into his soul, the way she moved like the ocean itself. It was as if she had cast a spell on him. A few days after their last meeting, Kunnel sat in his office, staring out the window. Papers were spread out on his desk, but he hadn't touched them all morning. His assistant, Jide, knocked softly on the door and poked his head in. Sir, the board meeting is about to start, Jide said cautiously. Kunnel waved him off without looking. Cancel it. Cancel it? Jide repeated, his eyebrows shooting up. Kunnel never missed board meetings. Yes, cancel it, Kunnel said sharply. I'm busy. Jide hesitated for a moment before stepping out and closing the door. Kunnel sighed, running his hand through his hair. He couldn't go on like this. He needed to see Amina again, and he needed to see her now. That evening, Kunnel found himself driving aimlessly around Lagos. The streets were busy as always, filled with honking cars and people rushing home. But Kunnel barely noticed. He kept looking for her, hoping she might appear like she had by the water the other night. As he passed by the area near her former office, he decided to stop and make a call. He pulled out his phone and dialed Jide. Jide, Kunnel said, trying to sound calm. I need you to track down someone for me. Of course, sir. Who is it? Jide asked. Her name is Amina. She used to work at that design firm downtown. She's important, Kunal said, choosing his words carefully. Understood. I'll get on it right away, Jide replied. Kunal hung up and leaned back in his seat. He felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. He wasn't sure why he was so desperate to find her, but the feeling was impossible to ignore. The next morning, Jide called with news. Sir, I found something, Jide said. It seems she moved out of her apartment 2 days ago. There's no record of where she went. Kunal frowned. What about her colleagues? Did anyone say anything about her? No, sir, Jide replied. It's like she just vanished. Kunal gripped the phone tightly. He refused to believe she was gone. Keep looking, he ordered. And let me know the moment you find anything. Yes, sir, Jide said. Kunal ended the call, feeling more frustrated than ever. He couldn't understand why Amina would just disappear. It didn't make sense. Days turned into weeks, but Kunal couldn't shake his obsession. His business began to suffer as he missed meetings and ignored calls from important clients. Even Lara started to notice. One evening, as Kunal sat in his study pretending to work, Lara walked in. Kunal, she said softly, can we talk? Kunal didn't look up. I'm busy. You're always busy, Lara said, her voice tinged with frustration. But you're not really here. You haven't been yourself lately. Kunal finally looked up, his expression blank. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean, Lara said, crossing her arms. You've been distracted, distant. You're not even trying to hide it anymore. Kunal sighed, leaning back in his chair. It's just work, Lara. Things have been stressful. Don't lie to me, Lara said firmly. I know when something is wrong. Is it another woman? Kunal's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Kunal, Lara said, her voice trembling. If there's someone else, just tell me. There's no one else, Kunal lied. You're overthinking things. Lara stared at him for a long moment before shaking her head. You can keep your secrets, but don't think I don't see what's happening. Whatever it is, it's tearing you apart. Without waiting for a response, Lara turned and left the room. Kunal sat in silence, her words echoing in his mind. She was right. Something was tearing him apart. And that something was Amina. One evening, as Kunal drove back home after another long, unproductive day, his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the beach tonight. Midnight. Come alone. Kunal's heart raced. He didn't need to guess who it was. He knew it was Amina. Without a second thought, he changed direction and headed for the coast. At midnight, Kunal arrived at the beach. The moon was high, casting a silver glow over the waves. The air was cool and quiet, with only the sound of the ocean breaking the stillness. He stepped out of his car and looked around. Then he saw her. Amina stood by the water, her white dress billowing gently in the breeze. She looked like a vision, as if she belonged to the sea itself. Amina, Kunal called out, walking toward her. She turned to face him, her expression calm but unreadable. You came, she said softly. Of course I came, Kunal said. I've been looking for you everywhere. Why did you leave without saying anything? I had my reasons, Amina replied. Do you have any idea what I've been through trying to find you? Kunal asked, his voice rising. I couldn't stop thinking about you. I still can't. Amina looked at him for a long moment. You shouldn't have looked for me, Kunal. What does that mean? He demanded. Why are you acting like this? Because it's better this way, she said simply. Better for who? Kunal asked, stepping closer. Not for me. I don't care what you're hiding, Amina. I just want to be with you. Amina shook her head. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Kunal insisted. There's something about you, something I can't explain. I need to know the truth. The truth? Amina repeated, her voice laced with sadness. The truth isn't something you're ready for. Try me, Kunal said. Amina sighed, turning her gaze to the ocean. There are things in this world that can't be explained, Kunal. Things that people like you don't understand. What are you talking about? He asked, confused. I'm talking about secrets, she said. Secrets that can destroy people. Then tell me, Kunal urged. Whatever it is, I can handle it. Amina turned to face him again. Her eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and something else. Something almost like fear. Be careful what you wish for, she said quietly. Because once you know the truth, there's no going back. I don't care, Kunal said firmly. I need to know. For a moment, Amina seemed to consider his words. Then she stepped closer, so close that he could see the faint shimmer of her skin in the moonlight. Kunal, she said softly, are you sure you're ready for this? Yes, he said without hesitation. Amina's gaze held his for a long moment before she finally nodded. Then meet me here tomorrow night. Same time. Kunal's heart pounded. You'll tell me everything? Everything, she promised. But once I do, there's no turning back. I'll be here, Kunal said, his voice steady. Amina gave him one last look before turning and walking away. Kunal watched her until she disappeared into the darkness, his mind racing with questions. When Kunal returned home that night, he found Lara waiting for him in the living room. She was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed and her expression serious. Where have you been? She asked. Out, Kunal said simply. Out where? Lara pressed. Just driving, he replied, avoiding her gaze. Driving, Lara repeated, her voice heavy with disbelief. At midnight, I needed to clear my head, Kunal said. Lara stood up, her eyes blazing. Do you think I'm stupid, Kunal? Do you think I don't know what's going on? What are you talking about? Kunal asked, feigning innocence. You're lying to me, Lara said, her voice trembling. You've been lying to me for weeks. I don't know who she is, but I know there's someone else. Kunal didn't respond. Say something, Lara shouted, her voice breaking. Do you even care about this family? About me? Kunal finally looked at her, his expression cold. I don't have time for this, Lara. Of course you don't, she said bitterly. You're too busy chasing whatever it is you're chasing. She turned and stormed out of the room, leaving Kunal alone once again. He sat down heavily on the couch, his mind swirling with thoughts of Amina. No matter what Lara said or did, he couldn't stop himself. He was too far gone. The next night, Kunal returned to the beach. The moon was just as bright, and the waves lapped gently at the shore. He stood there, waiting, his heart pounding with anticipation. Finally, Amina appeared, her figure illuminated by the moonlight. She walked toward him, her movements graceful and almost otherworldly. You came, she said softly. Of course I did, Kunal replied. Now tell me the truth. Amina sighed, her expression somber. Are you sure, Kunal? Once you hear this, everything will change. I'm sure, he said. Amina took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the ocean. All right, she said. But remember, you asked for this. And with those words, the waves seemed to grow louder, as if the ocean itself was listening. The waves crashed softly against the shore as Kunal stood motionless, waiting for Amina to speak. The night was still, but the air around them felt heavy, like something big was about to happen. Amina looked at him, her green eyes filled with something Kunal couldn't place. Was it sadness? Fear? Whatever it was, it made him feel uneasy. You're so sure you want the truth, she said softly, her voice barely louder than the waves. But once I tell you, your life will never be the same. Kunal stepped closer to her. I don't care, he said firmly. I need to know. Whatever it is, I can handle it. Amina sighed and turned her gaze to the ocean. The truth is not what you think, Kunal. And once you know it, you can't unlearn it. I've already made up my mind, Kunal said. Stop stalling and tell me. Amina looked at him again, her expression unreadable. Very well. But I warned you. Kunal's heart pounded as he waited. He thought she would start talking right away, but instead, she turned and walked toward the water. The hem of her dress trailed behind her, brushing the sand. She stopped just as the waves touched her feet and stood there for a long moment, staring out at the sea. Kunal grew impatient. Amina, what are you doing? Talk to me. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. Do you know what the ocean is? Kunnal? What kind of question is that? Kunnal asked, frowning. It's water. A lot of water. Amina smiled faintly but didn't turn around. To most people, yes. But to those who truly understand, the ocean is alive. It sees, it hears, it remembers. Kunnal blinked. What are you talking about? She turned to face him, her expression serious. The ocean is a world of its own. A world you've disrespected. Disrespected? Kunnal repeated, confused. What does that mean? Amina's eyes flashed. Your ships, Kunnal. Your business. You've built your empire by exploiting the sea. You've taken, and now it's time to pay. Kunnal stared at her, stunned. What are you saying? This is about my business. It's not just about your business, Amina said. It's about who you are. Your greed. Your lies. Your betrayal. Kunnal felt his anger rising. If this is some kind of lecture, I don't need it. I asked for the truth, not a sermon. This is the truth, Amina said sharply. You've lived your life without care for the consequences. And now, the ocean has sent me to collect what you owe. Kunnal's mouth went dry. Sent you? What do you mean? Amina's gaze didn't waver. I'm not who you think I am, Kunnal. I never was. Kunnal shook his head, trying to make sense of her words. What are you talking about? Before she could answer, the waves behind her began to grow louder. The water seemed to rise, though there was no wind or storm. Kunnal took a step back, his heart racing. What's happening? He asked, his voice shaking. Amina didn't move. She stood still, her eyes locked on his. You wanted the truth, she said. Now you'll see it. Kunnal watched in horror as the water behind her swirled and glimmered, like something alive. Then, right before his eyes, Amina began to change. Her legs shimmered and blurred, merging together. Her feet disappeared, replaced by a long, glistening tail covered in iridescent scales. Her hair seemed to move on its own, flowing like the waves around her. She was no longer just a woman. She was something else, something otherworldly. Kunnal stumbled backward, his breath caught in his throat. What are you? I am what your people call a mamiwata, Amina said, her voice calm. A being of the sea, a guardian of the waters. Kunnal shook his head, unable to believe what he was seeing. This can't be real. It's as real as the waves behind me, Amina said. And now, Kunnal, you understand. The ocean sent me to you. Kunnal tried to speak, but no words came out. His legs felt weak, and he nearly fell to his knees. Amina moved closer, her tail gliding effortlessly through the shallow water. I didn't come to hurt you, Kunnal, she said. But the gods of the sea are angry. They've watched you for years, taking without giving back. They've seen the damage you've done. And now they demand justice. Justice, Kunnal repeated, his voice trembling. What does that mean? It means you have a choice, Amina said. You can leave behind your life, your wealth, your power, everything you've built, and join me in the sea. Or what? Kunnal whispered. Or you will lose everything, Amina said simply. Your ships, your money, your family. The gods will take it all. Kunnal stared at her, his mind racing. You can't be serious. I'm very serious, Amina said. The choice is yours. Kunnal sat in his car for a long time after leaving the beach. His hands gripped the steering wheel, and his mind replayed everything he had just seen and heard. He didn't know what to believe. Part of him wanted to convince himself it was all a dream, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. When he finally returned home, it was nearly dawn. Lara was awake, sitting at the dining table with a cup of tea. She looked up as he walked in. You're home late, she said, her voice calm but cold. I had something to take care of, Kunnal mumbled, avoiding her gaze. Lara set her cup down and folded her arms. Kunnal, we need to talk. Not now, Kunnal said, walking past her. Yes, now, Lara said, standing up. I'm tired of being ignored. I'm tired of the lies. Kunnal stopped and turned to face her. What do you want from me, Lara? I want the truth, she said. I want to know what's going on with you. I want to know why you've been acting like this. Kunnal sighed heavily. You wouldn't understand. Try me, Lara said, her voice firm. Kunnal hesitated. He couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. It's just work, he lied. Things have been stressful. Lara shook her head. Don't insult me, Cunnel. I know it's more than that. I know there's someone else. Cunnel didn't respond. Say something, Lara demanded. If you don't care about me anymore, at least have the decency to say it. Cunnel's jaw tightened. This isn't about you, Lara. Then what is it about? She asked, her voice breaking. Because whatever it is, it's tearing us apart. Cunnel looked away. I can't explain it right now. Lara stared at him, her eyes filling with tears. You're destroying this family, Cunnel. And for what? Cunnel didn't answer. He turned and walked away, leaving Lara standing alone in the kitchen. Over the next few days, Cunnel tried to focus on his work, but nothing seemed to go right. He received news that one of his cargo ships had disappeared in the Atlantic. No distress signals, no sign of the crew. Just gone. How does a whole ship vanish? Cunnel demanded during a call with his shipping manager. We don't know, sir, the manager replied. There's no explanation. Cunnel slammed the phone down, his frustration boiling over. First Amina's warnings, and now this. Was it all connected? That night, Cunnel sat in his study, staring at the documents in front of him. His shipping empire, his wealth, his reputation. It all felt like it was slipping through his fingers. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Jide. Another ship reported missing. No trace of it. Awaiting further instructions. Cunnel's heart sank. He couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was happening. Something he didn't understand. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. The line rang a few times before a familiar voice answered. Cunnel, said the voice on the other end. It's been a long time. Mama Zainab, Cunnel said, his voice trembling. I need your help. Cunnel sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The call to Mama Zainab, a spiritualist from his childhood village, had been his last hope. He hadn't spoken to her in years, but something about her calm yet knowing voice over the phone made him feel like she could help. Her words were still ringing in his ears. Come to me, Cunnel. I have seen the waters rising around you. Bring your wife. Bring your wife. That part had unsettled him. Cunnel didn't want to involve Lara in this mess, but Mama Zainab had insisted. Now, back home, Cunnel hesitated outside the front door. It was late, but he knew Lara would still be awake. She had been waiting for answers, and he wasn't sure he could give her any she'd believe. He took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped inside. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of the television in the living room. Lara was curled up on the couch, her eyes on the screen but her expression far away. When she saw him, she muted the TV and sat up straight. Cunnel, she said, her voice calm but strained. Where have you been? I had to make a call, Cunnel said, avoiding her gaze. Lara frowned. Another call? Another excuse? Cunnel, I can't keep doing this. Cunnel walked over and sat down across from her. For the first time in weeks, he looked her in the eye. Lara, he began, his voice low. I need you to come with me tomorrow. Come with you where? She asked, crossing her arms. To see someone, he said. Someone who might be able to help us. Help us with what? Lara's tone sharpened. You're not making any sense. Cunnel rubbed his face with his hands. He felt like he was unraveling. There's something going on, Lara. Something I can't explain. But I need you to trust me. Lara stared at him, her eyes searching his face for answers. Trust you? Cunnel, you've been lying to me for weeks. Now you want me to follow you blindly without even telling me what's happening. I'll explain everything, Cunnel promised. But first, we need to go see her. Her? Lara's eyebrows shot up. Who is her, Cunnel? Another woman? No, Cunnel said quickly, shaking his head. It's not like that. Her name is Mama Zainab. She's a spiritual guide. Lara blinked, clearly caught off guard. A spiritual guide? Cunnel, since when do you believe in that kind of thing? Cunnel hesitated. Since now. Lara stared at him, her expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. You're serious, aren't you? Yes, Cunnel said firmly. Please, Lara, just come with me. I can't do this alone. Lara studied him for a long moment before finally nodding. Fine. But if this is another one of your games, Cunnel, I'm done. Do you hear me? I'm done. I hear you, Cunnel said quietly. The next morning, Cunnel and Lara drove out of Lagos, heading toward the small village where Mama Zainab lived. The car ride was tense and silent, with Lara staring out the window and Cunnel gripping the wheel like his life depended on it. When they arrived, the village was just as Cunnel remembered it. Small, quiet, and surrounded by trees that seemed to hum with life. Mama Zainab's house was a modest hut with colorful beads hanging in the doorway. Smoke curled up from a small fire outside, and the scent of herbs filled the air. Mama Zainab was waiting for them. She was a short, elderly woman with a headscarf wrapped tightly around her head and a walking stick in her hand. Her eyes were sharp and seemed to see straight through Cunnel as he approached. You've brought her, she said, nodding toward Lara. Yes, Mama, Cunnel said, bowing his head slightly. Mama Zainab turned to Lara and studied her for a moment. You are strong, she said finally. Stronger than he knows. Lara frowned but didn't respond. She glanced at Cunnel, who looked away. Come inside, Mama Zainab said, motioning toward the hut. We have much to discuss. Inside, the hut was dimly lit, with shelves filled with jars of herbs and bottles of strange liquids. A small mat was spread out on the floor, and Mama Zainab gestured for them to sit. So, she began, sitting down across from them. Tell me what has happened. Cunnel hesitated, glancing at Lara. She gave him a sharp look, silently urging him to speak. There's someone, Cunnel said finally. Her name is Amina. She's not normal. Mama Zainab raised an eyebrow. Not normal? What do you mean? Cunnel took a deep breath. She's a mermaid. Lara's head snapped toward him. What did you just say? Cunnel avoided her gaze. She's a mermaid. I saw her transform with my own eyes. Lara stared at him, her mouth open in disbelief. Cunnel, this isn't funny. I'm not joking, Cunnel said, his voice trembling. She's real, Lara. And she told me that the ocean sent her to punish me. Punish you for what? Lara demanded. For my greed, my business, my lies. Cunnel's voice broke. She said I've taken too much, and now I have to pay. Lara shook her head. This is insane. You expect me to believe this? It's the truth, Cunnel said. And that's why we're here. Mama Zainab can help us. Mama Zainab, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. You speak of the Mami Wada, she said. They are powerful spirits of the water. If one has come for you, Cunnel, it is because your actions have disturbed the balance. What does that mean? Cunnel asked, his voice shaking. It means you have offended the gods of the sea, Mama Zainab said. And they do not forgive easily. Cunnel felt his stomach drop. What can I do? Mama Zainab studied him for a moment. There is a ritual, but it will not be easy, and it will require great sacrifice. Cunnel swallowed hard. What kind of sacrifice? That is for the gods to decide, Mama Zainab said. Are you willing to do whatever it takes? Cunnel hesitated, glancing at Lara. Her expression was unreadable. Yes, he said finally. I'll do whatever it takes. Very well, Mama Zainab said. We will begin tonight. But you must understand, Cunnel, this is your last chance. If you fail, there will be no saving you. That evening, Mama Zainab prepared for the ritual. She instructed Cunnel and Lara to gather specific items. A white cloth, a bowl of fresh water, and a piece of coral from the ocean. Cunnel did as he was told, his hands trembling as he collected the items. As the sun set, they gathered outside by a small fire. Mama Zainab arranged the items carefully and began to chant in a language Cunnel didn't understand. The air felt heavy, and the flames flickered as if responding to her words. Cunnel, Mama Zainab said, her voice sharp. Step forward. Cunnel obeyed, his heart pounding. You must confess your sins, she said. Speak them aloud, so the gods may hear you. Cunnel hesitated, glancing at Lara. She was watching him with a mix of anger and sadness. I lied, Cunnel said finally, his voice shaking. I lied to my wife. I betrayed her. I let greed consume me. Continue, Mama Zainab commanded. I exploited people, Kunal admitted, his voice growing louder. I took from the ocean without giving back. I cared only about myself. Lara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say anything. Now, Mama Zainab said, offer your sacrifice. Kunal held up the piece of coral, his hands trembling. This is for the gods, he said. I give it to you. Please, spare me. Mama Zainab took the coral and placed it in the bowl of water. She continued chanting, her voice rising and falling like the waves. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the wind picked up, and the fire flared brightly. Kunal felt a chill run down his spine. It is done, Mama Zainab said finally. Now we wait. Wait for what? Kunal asked. For the gods' answer, she said. If they accept your sacrifice, you will be spared. If not, she didn't finish the sentence. But Kunal understood. His fate was no longer in his hands. As they drove back to Lagos, Kunal couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in his chest. He glanced at Lara, who was staring out the window, her expression unreadable. Lara, he said softly. I'm sorry. She didn't respond. I know I've hurt you, he continued, but I'm trying to make things right. Lara finally turned to face him. You should have thought about that before you lied to me. Before you betrayed me. I know, Kunal said, his voice breaking. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Lara looked at him for a long moment before turning back to the window. We'll see. Kunal drove in silence, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He didn't know if the gods would forgive him, but he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same. The next morning, Kunal sat in his study, staring blankly at the files on his desk. He hadn't slept. His mind replayed the events of the night before over and over, the ritual, the fire, the chilling silence afterward. The gods hadn't given a clear sign, and the uncertainty was eating him alive. The sound of Lara's voice broke his thoughts. She was standing in the doorway, her arms crossed and her face tense. Kunal, we need to talk. Kunal rubbed his temples. Not now, Lara. I'm trying to figure some things out. No, she said firmly, stepping into the room. We're not doing this again. You keep shutting me out, and I'm tired of it. Kunal sighed, leaning back in his chair. What do you want me to say, Lara? That I don't know what's going to happen? That I'm just as scared as you are. Scared? Lara's voice rose. Kunal, do you even understand what you've done? Do you know what you've dragged me into? Of course I know. Kunal snapped. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I planned for my life to fall apart? Lara shook her head. Your life isn't falling apart because of bad luck, Kunal. It's falling apart because of you. Your choices. Your lies. Your greed. And now we're all paying the price for it. Kunal slammed his hand on the desk. I know I messed up, Lara, but what do you want me to do? I've already done the ritual. I've already begged for forgiveness. What more can I do? Lara's eyes softened, but her voice was still steady. You can start by taking responsibility. Stop blaming everyone else. Stop running away from the truth. Kunal looked away, his jaw tight. He hated how right she was, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. Before Lara could say anything else, Kunal's phone buzzed on the desk. He picked it up and frowned at the screen. It's Jide, he muttered, answering the call. What is it? Sir, Jide's voice was shaky. Another ship. It's gone. Kunal felt his chest tighten. What do you mean, gone? Just like the others, Jide said. No signal, no distress call. It's just vanished. Kunal's hand trembled as he gripped the phone. This can't be happening. There's more, sir, Jide added hesitantly. The investors. They're pulling out. They don't want to risk working with us anymore. Kunal's stomach dropped. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. I'll call you back, he said abruptly, hanging up the phone. He stared at it for a moment before slamming it down on the desk. What happened? Lara asked, her voice cautious. Another ship, Kunal said through gritted teeth. Gone. And the investors are leaving. Lara's face fell. Kunal, I don't want to hear it, he snapped, standing up and pacing the room. I've already lost 3 ships. Half my business is gone. What more do they want from me? The gods don't care about your business, Lara said quietly. They care about balance. And right now, they're showing you what happens when you take too much. Connell stopped pacing and turned to face her. So what? Am I supposed to just sit here and watch everything I've built disappear? Lara met his gaze, her eyes steady. Maybe it's time to let go, Connell. Maybe this is the price you have to pay. Connell shook his head, his chest tightening with anger and fear. I can't let go, Lara. This is my life. My legacy. I worked too hard to lose it all. Sometimes, holding on does more harm than good, Lara said softly. Connell didn't respond. He couldn't. The thought of losing everything, his wealth, his power, his status, was too much to bear. Later that day, Connell sat in a meeting with his remaining staff. The room was tense, filled with worried faces and whispered conversations. Jide stood at the front, holding a stack of papers. As you can see, Jide said, pointing to a chart on the screen, our losses have been significant. If we don't find a solution soon, we may have to declare bankruptcy. Connell slammed his fist on the table. Bankruptcy is not an option. Sir, Jide said carefully, we've already lost 3 ships. The insurance claims have been denied because there's no evidence of what happened. And now the investors are pulling out. We're running out of options. Connell clenched his jaw. There has to be a way to fix this. We can't give up now. The room fell silent. No one dared to argue with him, but the hopelessness was clear on their faces. As the meeting ended, Connell stayed behind, staring at the empty conference room. He felt like he was sinking, the weight of his failures pulling him under. That night, Connell sat alone in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He stared out the window at the dark sky, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Suddenly, the room grew colder, and a strange sensation washed over him. He turned, and there she was, Amina, standing in the corner of the room. Her hair shimmered in the dim light, and her eyes were as piercing as ever. Amina, Connell breathed, his heart pounding. What are you doing here? I came to see if you've made your decision, she said, her voice calm and steady. Connell frowned. What decision? Amina stepped closer, her movements graceful and almost unnatural. You know what I mean, Connell. The gods are waiting. You've seen what happens when you refuse to listen. Connell stood, his hands trembling. I did the ritual. I offered my sacrifice. Isn't that enough? Amina shook her head. The gods are not easily appeased. They want more than words and tokens. They want true repentance. What does that even mean? Connell demanded. How am I supposed to repent when they're destroying everything I have? Perhaps that's the point, Amina said. You've built your life on greed and lies. The gods are stripping you of those things so you can start over. Connell stared at her, his chest tight. Start over? Do you have any idea what you're asking me to do? Yes, Amina said simply. I'm asking you to let go of the things that are holding you back. The things that have poisoned your soul. Connell shook his head. I can't. I won't. Then the gods will take everything, Amina said, her voice cold. And when they're done, there will be nothing left of you. Connell's anger flared. You don't understand. I've worked my whole life for this. I've sacrificed everything to get here. And now it's time to sacrifice something else, Amina said. Your pride. Your greed. Your old life. Connell's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she was right. He had spent his life chasing wealth and power, never thinking about the consequences. And now those consequences were staring him in the face. What do I do? He whispered, his voice breaking. Amina stepped closer, her eyes softening. You let go, Connell. You let the gods take what they need. And you trust that what's left will be enough. Connell closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. He didn't know if he could do it, but he didn't see any other way. When he opened his eyes, Amina was gone, and the room was silent once more. The next morning, Connell sat with Lara in the living room. He had told her everything about Amina, about the gods, about his choices. For the first time in weeks, he felt a small sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted. What happens now? Lara asked, her voice quiet. I don't know, Connell admitted. But I think I have to let it all go. Lara nodded, her expression thoughtful. Maybe that's what the gods wanted all along. Connell looked at her, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Do you think it's possible to start over? I don't know, Lara said honestly. But if you're willing to try, I'll be here. Connell reached for her hand, holding it tightly. Thank you. Lara gave him a small smile. Just don't make me regret it. Connell nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a chance to make things right. Connell woke up to the sound of rain pattering against the windows. The room felt cold and heavy, much like his thoughts. He turned to see Lara still asleep, her face peaceful yet distant. It had been weeks since they'd truly spoken without tension. Connell felt like a stranger in his own home, but today, something felt different. He slipped out of bed and made his way downstairs, where his phone buzzed insistently on the counter. Picking it up, he saw Jide's name flashing on the screen. What is it now, Jide? Connell asked, his voice gruff. Sir, there's another problem, Jide said, his tone shaky. The bank has frozen the company's accounts. They're investigating some irregularities. Connell's grip tightened on the phone. What irregularities? They're claiming there are missing funds and questionable transactions tied to offshore accounts. Sir, it's bad. Really bad. Connell's head spun. His empire was collapsing faster than he could keep up. Fix it, he snapped. I'll do my best. But, Jide hesitated. Sir, there's only so much I can do now. Connell ended the call without replying, his heart pounding in his chest. He slumped into a chair, rubbing his temples. Every move he made seemed to backfire. The gods, it seemed, were determined to strip him of everything. Lara walked into the room moments later, her robe tied tightly around her waist. She frowned when she saw the expression on Connell's face. More bad news? She asked, sitting across from him. Connell nodded, his voice hoarse. The accounts are frozen. They're saying there's fraud. I don't even know where to start. Lara sighed, her eyes narrowing slightly. Connell, when will you accept that this isn't just about business? This is about everything you've done. Everything you refuse to see. Do you think I don't know that? Connell snapped, his frustration spilling over. Do you think I don't realize how badly I've screwed up? Lara leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. Then stop trying to fix this like it's just another problem to solve. You can't control this, Connell. Not anymore. Then what am I supposed to do? He asked, his voice breaking. Sit here and let it all fall apart? Maybe, Lara said softly. Maybe you need to let it fall apart so you can see what's worth saving. Connell stared at her, her words cutting through his anger like a blade. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but deep down he knew she was right. Later that evening, Connell found himself pacing the living room, the tension in his chest building with every step. He kept glancing at his phone, half expecting another call from Jide or some other bearer of bad news. The storm outside had worsened, the rain now pounding against the windows like an angry drumbeat. Connell, Lara's voice called from the hallway. What are you doing? I can't just sit still, he muttered. I need to do something. Lara stepped closer, her arms wrapped around herself. What are you going to do? March into the ocean and demand the gods stop punishing you? Connell stopped pacing and looked at her, his face pale. Maybe I should. Lara froze, her eyes widening. What? Maybe I need to face them, Connell said, his voice trembling but resolute. Maybe I need to go back to Amina and finish this. Lara shook her head. Connell, you don't even know what that means. You don't know what they'll ask of you. I don't care, Connell said firmly. I can't keep running, Lara. If this is the only way to end it, then I have to try. Connell. Lara's voice softened, and for the first time in weeks, she reached for his hand. You don't have to do this alone. Connell looked at her, his eyes filling with gratitude and pain. I brought this on myself, Lara. It's my mess to clean up. Lara squeezed his hand. Maybe. But if you're going to face this, I'm not letting you face it alone. The following night, Connell and Lara drove to the beach where he had last seen Amina. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained overcast, the waves crashing loudly against the shore. Cunnell's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. "Are you sure about this?" Lara asked, her voice steady but laced with worry. "No," Cunnell admitted. "But I don't see any other way." They parked the car and stepped onto the sand, the wind whipping around them. The beach was eerily empty, the only sound coming from the relentless waves. Cunnell scanned the shoreline, his heart pounding. "Amina!" he called out, his voice carrying over the wind. "I'm here. Show yourself." First there was nothing. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Cunnell saw movement in the water. A figure emerged slowly, her form graceful and almost ethereal. Amina stood before them, her eyes as piercing as ever. "You came back," she said, her voice calm but tinged with something unreadable. "I didn't have a choice," Cunnell replied, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Everything is falling apart. I need to know what to do." Amina's gaze shifted to Lara, who stood silently beside Cunnell. "And you brought her." "She's my wife," Cunnell said firmly. "She deserves to know the truth." Amina nodded slowly. "Then you both must listen carefully." The waves behind her seemed to rise and fall in rhythm with her words, as if the ocean itself was speaking through her. "The gods have watched you, Cunnell," Amina said. "They have seen your greed, your lies, your betrayal. They have taken from you to teach you a lesson. But you have yet to truly understand." "I understand," Cunnell said, his voice trembling. "I've lost everything. What more do they want from me?" "They want your pride," Amina said simply. "They want you to let go of the man you were and embrace the man you could be." Cunnell frowned. "And how am I supposed to do that?" Amina stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "By surrendering. By giving up the things that mean the most to you. Your wealth, your power, your ego. Only then will the gods show mercy." Cunnell's chest tightened. "You're asking me to give up everything I've worked for." "I'm not asking," Amina said. "The gods are demanding it." Cunnell looked at Lara, his eyes pleading. "What do I do?" Lara held his gaze, her expression both pained and resolute. "Do what's right, Cunnell. Not for the gods, but for yourself. For us." Cunnell closed his eyes, his mind racing. He thought about his empire, his reputation, the life he had built. But then he thought about Lara, about the family he had neglected, about the emptiness he felt despite all his success. He took a deep breath and turned back to Amina. "I'll do it." Amina nodded. "Then follow me." Cunnell and Lara followed Amina to the edge of the water, the cold waves lapping at their feet. Amina raised her arms, and the wind seemed to still, the world growing quiet. "Speak your truth," Amina said, her voice commanding. "Offer your final confession to the gods." Cunnell's throat tightened, but he stepped forward, his voice steady despite his fear. "I was greedy. I cared more about money than people. I lied to my wife, my family, my employees. I took from the ocean without giving anything back. I was selfish, and I hurt everyone around me." The waves seemed to swell, as if acknowledging his words. "And now," Amina said, "you must make your sacrifice." Cunnell hesitated, his heart pounding. He looked at Lara, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pendant, a family heirloom, the last symbol of his wealth and status. He held it tightly, his fingers trembling. "I give this to the gods," Cunnell said, his voice breaking. "I give everything." He threw the pendant into the water, and the waves swallowed it instantly. For a moment there was silence. Then, the ocean roared, and Cunnell felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. "It is done," Amina said softly. "The gods have heard you." Cunnell turned to Lara, his eyes filled with relief and gratitude. She smiled, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years, Cunnell felt free. The waves had calmed, and for the first time in weeks, Cunnell felt like he could breathe. The sound of the ocean was steady, almost soothing, but the weight in his chest hadn't fully lifted. Lara stood beside him, her hand gripping his tightly. Amina, standing just beyond the water's edge, turned toward them. "It's not over yet," she said quietly. Kunal frowned, his heart sinking. What do you mean? I gave them everything. I confessed. Amina raised a hand to silence him. The gods are not easily satisfied. Kunal, you've taken from them for years. One gesture is not enough to restore balance. Kunal felt a wave of frustration rise in his chest. What more do they want from me? I've lost everything already. My business is gone. My reputation is in shambles. What else can I give? Amina's gaze was steady, almost pitying. Your final test lies ahead. The gods demand a choice. And this time, it will not be so simple. Kunal's hands began to shake. He turned to Lara, his voice trembling. I don't understand. What kind of choice? Lara squeezed his hand, her face pale but resolute. Whatever it is, Kunal, we'll face it together. Amina took a step forward, her presence commanding. Listen carefully. The gods have offered you two paths. One leads to redemption, but it comes at a cost. The other allows you to keep what little remains of your old life. But it will come with pain and regret. Kunal's throat was dry. What are the choices? Amina's voice softened. The first choice, you give yourself to the sea. Leave behind this life, your family, your name. You will serve the gods forever, ensuring the balance is never broken again. Kunal's heart stopped. And the second? You walk away, Amina said. You return to your life, but you will lose everything that ties you to the person you once were. Your wife, your home, any chance of rebuilding what you've lost. Lara gasped, her grip tightening on Kunal's arm. What? No, that's not fair. Kunal's mind raced, his thoughts a chaotic mess. There has to be another way. I've done everything they've asked. There is no other way, Amina said firmly. The gods are giving you a chance to decide your own fate. But you must choose now. Kunal turned to Lara, his voice breaking. I can't do this without you. I won't. Lara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Kunal, you have to choose what's right. Not just for me, but for yourself. For all the people you've hurt. Kunal dropped to his knees in the sand, his head in his hands. I can't. I don't know what to do. Lara knelt beside him, her voice trembling but steady. Kunal, listen to me. If you go into the sea, I'll never see you again. Our family will never be whole. But if you don't do what's right, this will never end. The gods will never stop. Kunal looked up at her, his face streaked with tears. How do I choose between losing you and losing myself? Lara reached out and cupped his face in her hands. You don't lose yourself by doing the right thing. You find yourself. Kunal closed his eyes, her words sinking into him. He thought about everything he had done, the lies, the greed, the destruction. He thought about the man he had become, a man who had hurt everyone he cared about. And then he thought about Lara standing by his side even now after everything. He turned to Amina, his voice hoarse but resolute. I'll go with you. I'll give myself to the sea. Lara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Kunal, no. Kunal turned to her, his heart breaking. It's the only way, Lara. If I don't, the gods will destroy everything. I can't let that happen. But I can't lose you, Lara whispered, her voice cracking. Not like this. Kunal pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. You won't lose me, he said softly. Not really. I'll always be with you. Lara sobbed against his chest, her tears soaking his shirt. I can't do this without you. Yes, you can, Kunal said, his voice firm but gentle. You're stronger than me, Lara. You always have been. Amina stepped closer, her expression somber. It's time. Kunal pulled back from Lara, his hands cupping her face. Take care of our family. Take care of yourself. Lara shook her head, her tears falling freely. Kunal, please. I love you, Kunal said, his voice breaking. Never forget that. Before Lara could respond, Amina extended her hand toward Kunal. He hesitated for a moment, then took it. The moment their hands touched, a strange calm washed over him. The fear, the anger, the regret. It all seemed to fade away. Amina led him toward the water, the waves rising to meet them. Kunal glanced back at Lara one last time, her figure blurred by his tears. Then, without another word, he stepped into the sea. Lara stood frozen on the beach, the cold wind whipping around her. She watched as Cunnel disappeared beneath the waves, Amina beside him. The water was eerily still, as if it had swallowed him whole. For a moment there was silence. Then, the ocean roared, and a wave crashed against the shore, spraying Lara with cold water. She fell to her knees, her sobs echoing into the night. Hours later, Lara sat alone in the car, staring out at the empty beach. Her heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest. Cunnel was gone, and she didn't know if she could ever feel whole again. But deep down, she knew he had made the right choice. He had done what he couldn't do before. He had sacrificed himself for something greater, and for that she was proud of him. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Lara took a deep breath and wiped her tears. She would honor Cunnel's sacrifice. She would carry on, not just for herself but for their family and the future he had fought to protect. And somewhere, deep beneath the waves, Cunnel watched over her, his soul finally at peace. The days after Cunnel's disappearance felt like a blur to Lara. Every morning, she woke up hoping it had all been a bad dream, but the emptiness in the house and the weight in her chest reminded her that it wasn't. She sat at the dining table one morning, staring at a cup of tea that had gone cold. The house was too quiet, too still. Her thoughts kept replaying that final moment on the beach, Cunnel's face, his hand slipping from hers, and the sound of the waves swallowing him. It felt unreal, like a story she had read but didn't want to believe. A knock on the door startled her. She set the cup down and went to answer it. It was Jide, looking nervous and out of place without his usual confidence. "Ma'am," he said, bowing slightly. I wanted to check on you." Lara gave him a weak smile and stepped aside to let him in. "Thank you, Jide. That's kind of you." Jide hesitated, then walked into the living room, holding a folder tightly in his hands. He sat down, placing the folder on the table. Lara noticed how his fingers fidgeted with the edges. "Is everything all right?" she asked, sitting across from him. "Ma'am, it's about the company," Jide said, clearing his throat. "With Mr. Adebanjo gone, there's no clear leadership. The board is panicking, and the staff are uncertain about their future." Lara looked at him, the weight of his words pressing on her. "What do you want me to do, Jide? I'm not a businesswoman." "Maybe not," Jide said cautiously, "but you're his wife. People will look to you now. They'll trust you because of who you are." Lara sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Cunnel left me in this mess. I don't even know where to begin." "I can help," Jide said quickly, "but we need someone at the top. Someone who can make decisions, even if it's temporary." Lara closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She thought about Cunnel, about the promises he had made and broken. But she also thought about the man he had tried to become in the end. He had given his life to make things right. Maybe it was time for her to do the same. "I'll try," she said finally, her voice steady. "But I'll need your help." Jide nodded, relief washing over his face. "Of course, ma'am. Whatever you need." Over the next few weeks, Lara threw herself into the work of salvaging what was left of Cunnel's empire. It wasn't easy. The company was drowning in debt, and the investors were still hesitant to return. But with Jide's guidance and Lara's determination, they started to make progress. One afternoon, as Lara was reviewing documents in Cunnel's study, her phone buzzed. It was a message from one of the ship captains who had worked for Cunnel for years. "Ma'am, we found one of the missing ships. It washed up near the coast. The crew is safe, but the ship is in bad shape." Lara's heart skipped a beat. She called the captain immediately. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We don't know," the captain admitted. "It's like the ship just reappeared out of nowhere. The crew doesn't remember much. They say it was like they were caught in a storm, but there's no sign of damage from weather." Lara swallowed hard, her thoughts racing. She thanked the captain and hung up, her hands shaking. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was connected to Cunnel, to the gods, to everything they had gone through. That evening, Lara drove to the beach alone. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water. She stood at the edge of the shore, the waves lapping at her feet, and closed her eyes. "Cunnel," she whispered, her voice carried away by the wind. "If you're out there, if you can hear me, I hope you've found peace." The ocean was silent for a long moment. Then, as if in response, a gentle wave rolled in, brushing against her ankles. Lara opened her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Months passed, and life began to settle into a new normal. Lara had taken over the company temporarily, but she had also started to make changes. She sold off unnecessary assets, redirected resources to ethical and sustainable projects, and focused on giving back to the communities that Cunnel's business had once exploited. One afternoon, Lara was in a meeting with a group of local leaders when an elderly man approached her after the discussion. "Madam Lara," he said, his voice warm but firm, "I wanted to thank you for what you've done for our village. We haven't seen this kind of support in years." "It's the least I can do," Lara said, smiling. "I'm trying to make things right." The man nodded, his eyes twinkling. "You've brought balance back to us. The ocean remembers kindness, just as it remembers greed." Lara's smile faltered slightly, but she nodded in gratitude. His words stayed with her long after he left. One evening, as Lara prepared dinner for her children, her daughter ran into the kitchen holding a drawing. "Mommy, look," the little girl said excitedly. "I drew Daddy." Lara's heart clenched as she looked at the drawing. It was simple, a child's rendering of a man standing by the ocean, waves swirling around his feet. "Why is he by the water, sweetheart?" Lara asked gently. "Because that's where he lives now," the girl said matter-of-factly. "He told me he's watching us from the ocean." Lara's breath caught. "He told you?" The little girl nodded. "In my dream. He said he's happy, and he wants us to be happy too." Lara blinked back tears, pulling her daughter into a hug. "He's right," she whispered. "We'll be happy. For him." Years later, on the anniversary of Cunnel's sacrifice, Lara returned to the beach where she had last seen him. The waves were calm, the sky a soft blue. She stood at the water's edge, holding a small flower in her hand. "I kept my promise," she said softly, her voice steady. "The family is safe. The business is better. We're happy. I hope you're proud." She placed the flower in the water, watching as it drifted out to sea. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure in the distance, standing tall against the horizon. But when she blinked, it was gone. Lara smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She turned and walked away, leaving the past behind and stepping into a future full of hope.